Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought, of course, that I would review this sort of video that I thought would be very particularly interesting. And I'm probably about 3 days to a week late to the party on this particular video, or at least on this particular subject. But, of course, for those of you that did not hear about this little scuffle and this little beef that these two fighters have been having on Twitter, probably I think for a little bit now, especially ever since Gervonta Davis, he kind of was going against Terrence Bud Crawford when he picked Errol Spence Jr. over him, and even went a step further to say that Terrence Bud Crawford, that he had a quote-unquote glass shield. Basically, what was he saying? He was saying that Terrence Bud Crawford didn't have a great chin, and that he had a quote-unquote glass chin. And before we actually go into the video with that, what that is about, the reason why many people have said that Terrence Bud Crawford has a glass jaw, because I actually had someone on the live not too long ago, and they said, a lot of people say that Terrence Crawford has a quote-unquote glass jaw. I don't know where that really came from. Well, where that came from was when Terrence Bud Crawford was fighting Yuriorkis Gamboa at 135, and he got hit with that mega right hand in the ninth round that he ran straight into, because Crawford at times, once again, he can get a little bit too greedy sometimes with certain exchanges, and he got hit with the mega right hand straight down the pipe and ran straight into it right on the jaw, and he was very wobbly legged. He was he was probably, had he got hit with another flush shot from Yuriorkis Gamboa that would have been similar to that, he probably would have been knocked down very badly. But Crawford, of course, like regular, due to both his size and his adaptability and his all-around skills, he was able to, of course, get past it, and of course, he was able to knock out Yuriorkis Gamboa within the same round. But this little beef between Terrence Bud Crawford and Gervonta Davis has been going on for a while. But Terrence Bud Crawford and Gervonta Davis, they had a little exchange on Twitter. Gervonta Davis even eventually took it to the point where he talked about to the point where he talked about Terrence Bud Crawford's family, called his wife 380 pounds. But, is what it is. Anyways, the reason why I wanted to talk about this is not only to talk about the Terrence Crawford and Gervonta Davis situation, but I also wanted to review a video by that Mr. AKHi TV. And the reason why I like to review AKHi TV and Dante's Boxing Nation so much, once again, and not just their channels, but every once in a while, the IBFP or certain channels like that, is because a lot of channels like these, they can be somewhat of politicians or people that are a part of the YTBC or something like that. A lot of boxing fans and a lot of boxing channels, they are politicians. Don't get it twisted, they're all going to try to get their points across, but once again, what someone will do is that they'll go to either one side of the spectrum or they'll go to the other side of the spectrum. And what you're going to notice from AKHi TV is because, once again, what they have to frame about Terrence Bud Crawford of this generation is that he is the clear best and he is the clear greatest of this generation, and it's not even a debate. That's what they're trying to debate. And anyone who argues Canelo Alvarez or Usyk, they're just going to say, oh, well, you're just putting them there because, you don't want a black fighter to be #1 pound for pound. Even though you could clearly argue that Usyk or Canelo are the greatest of their generation. Now, if you're talking about someone like Inoue, in a way, I would say that it's a little bit too soon because I don't think that he has enough A-grade level names on his resume yet. But speaking of Mr. Inoue, in a way, what you're going to notice about AKHi TV within this video is that he finally speaks a little bit of the truth, and the truth that he's really known all along about Gervonta Davis, but he can't really state it because of the amount of subscriber base that is really a part, of the pro-black cult fan base, a part of the LDBC and new media. He can't really claim that, and on top of that, of his severe bias commentary. But on top of that, he's finally going to state it because, once again, Crawford is the main guy to where if you're an AKHi TV, you can't go after him. Because if his narrative and if his, his propaganda is going to work about Crawford being the quote-unquote greatest of this generation, if black American fighters criticize Terrence Bud Crawford or criticize his resume, that's going to make their narrative that much harder. Because what they always love to say is that, even Usyk and even these other non-black fighters rank Crawford as the #1 pound for pound. But you notice that they never stated, when Crawford also stated that Usyk could be also potentially #1 pound for pound as well. They never talked about it. So once again, that's a big part of AKHi TV's propaganda. And AKHi TV, what he's going to do is that he's going to be talking about Gervonta Davis and how he has not really been chasing for legacy, which is somewhat true, to a degree, But what he's going to try to do is that he's going to try to not only rope Gervonta Davis into this, but rope Naoya Inoue into this subconsciously. And he's not really going to say anything super criticizing about Naoya Inoue or anything like that, but he's going to put Naoya Inoue in the conversation And the reason why that is so AKHi TV can basically, really have his excuses already in order in line, just in case Terrence Bud Crawford gets his ass kicked by Canelo Alvarez. So just in case that ends up happening, and certain people try to have either Canelo or Usyk or Inoue as the #1 pound-for-pound fighter, AKHi TV can say, oh, well, Crawford was moving up 3 weight classes. That's the excuse that he's going to use. And listen, I'm not going to claim that that's a completely invalid excuse. Listen, we all know that Canelo Alvarez is girthier and that he's definitely bigger than Terrence Bud Crawford, at least when you talk about the weight. But the reason why I say that AKHi TV is going to use that excuse is because these are the same guys that claim that Canelo Alvarez was afraid and ducking Canelo Alvarez for years. That Canelo was avoiding Crawford for years, that he was ducking Crawford for years, and that Canelo Alvarez is allegedly this super limited fighter, this average Mexican boxer, this guy that apparently is massively overrated. Well, if you're going to talk all this shit, then, put your money where your mouth is. Don't make all these bullshit ass excuses before the fight, because for Canelo Alvarez being this alleged limited fighter, Canelo Alvarez is only going to be about 20 pounds bigger than Terrence Bud Crawford in the fight. So if Terrence Bud Crawford is up there with Mayweather and up there with guys like that, then shouldn't he be able to beat Canelo Alvarez if Canelo Alvarez is the exact same fighter that he was as when he lost to Floyd Mayweather Jr.? And on top of that, Crawford and Canelo are nowhere near comparative in skill. Crawford is apparently levels, not just a level, but levels, above Canelo Alvarez. That's why I say AKHi TV and these guys, they don't truly believe in a lot of the bullshit that they're saying. All this is for propaganda, and that's why you can't rely on their analysis. But once again, let's see what AKHi TV has to say. Let's get into it.
Right. So, boxing pound for pound #1, Terrence Bud Crawford was going back and forth with another pound for pound fighter, Gervonta Tank Davis, and it's more than fair to say that it went too far, where Gervonta
Tank Davis, out of any other fighter that I've personally seen in most recent history, like, there's so many people that are trying to push this guy as a top 5 pound-for-pound fighter for so little results. And don't get it twisted. I mean, Lomachenko was pushed towards the top 5 pound-for-pound a little bit early when he hadn't really beat that many A-grade names yet. And of course, Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez, he was there as well. But at least what you can say about Lomachenko is that he had the win over Gary Russell Jr. and he was starting to get some bigger wins and he was looking severely skilled. And at least with Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez, he was at least a legitimate 3-weight division champion and about 46-0. Now, I don't agree with them being ranked sometimes as early as what they were, but, Lomachenko would eventually deserve that #1 pound-for-pound spot. But Gervonta Tank Davis is literally getting a potential top 5 pound-for-pound spot literally off of what? He's only been a champion in 2 separate weight classes, and the only reason why he's been a champion at this weight class is because the belt was vacated. It's not the only reason. Of course, he, had to beat Frank Martin in order, to kind of keep that belt. He beat a very talented fighter in Frank Martin, and of course, he beat Ryan Garcia, but those guys have also never been champions before. When you talk about, Vasily Lomachenko, at least he fought the counterparts of some of his divisions, like a Guillermo Rigondeaux and a Nicholas Walters and a Gary Russell Jr. and later on a Jorge Linares. And then, of course, later on we'll go on to fight Devin Haney and Teofimo Lopez, even though, of course, he ended up losing those fights. Other than Ryan Garcia, who has Gervonta Tank Davis really fucking fought that would be looked at as a quote-unquote counterpart? And when I'm talking about a counterpart, I'm talking about where people said, wow, the world of boxing really needs to see this fight. Now, to be fair, Frank Martin was a fighter that I think was an A-grade level opponent. He was a very talented and a very skilled opponent, and even a little bit bigger than Gervonta. But pretty much everyone knows what I mean when I'm talking about counterparts. A guy that is looked at as either debatably the best of their division, or on top of that, looked at within that top 10 to top 20 pound-for-pound, fighter range. No fighter that Gervonta has ever fought has ever been looked within that range. And listen, I don't think that Crawford, for example, I don't think that he has the strongest of resumes. But say whatever you want to about Terrence Bud Crawford, he did fight Yuriorkis Gamboa when he probably would have not been top 10 pound-for-pound, but maybe top 20. He did fight Victor Postol when that was the fight to make it 140 pounds. No, I don't think that Victor Postol is an exceptional fighter, but I think that it was an A- level win. And of course, the man eventually fought Errol Spence Jr. Who the fuck has Gervonta Tank Davis fought? Really, from anywhere from Lomachenko to Teofimo Lopez to Shakur Stevenson to Devin Haney, man hasn't fucking fought any of them. All the fights that anybody really wants to see with Gervonta Tank Davis, Gervonta has not really tried to accept any of them. I mean, to be fair to the man, he did try to make the Shakur and the Vasily Lomachenko fight somewhat this year. Vasily Lomachenko, of course, pulled out. But to be honest with you, he could have made that fight several years ago, and he didn't do it. You know, now what AKHi TV will try to tell you is that, you know, Lomachenko allegedly ducked Gervonta Tank Davis many years ago. All that is bullshit. Lomachenko tried to call out Mikey Garcia and Gervonta Tank Davis several years ago, and those guys were scared to death of Vasily Lomachenko. And I'm not, you know, this person that says that everyone was avoiding Lomachenko. Were there certain guys that were avoiding him? Yes. Now, there's certain guys like Devin Haney that Lomachenko had kind of slithered around in order to, you know, not possibly suffer a loss. Yes. But yeah, of course, you know, I can't really give Lomachenko that much criticism because he would go on to fight Teofimo Lopez, which at the time was looked at as a bigger fight and who was debatably the more talented fighter. You know, and of course with top rank. So, I mean, you know, once again, I don't blame Lomachenko too hard for that. And then, of course, he did eventually get in the ring with Devin Haney. But has Gervonta Tank Davis really ever tried to get in the ring with Devin Haney or Shakur Stevenson really that hard? Or, you know, all these other guys like a Teofimo Lopez? Because I've never seen it. And he definitely didn't try to get in the ring with Lomachenko when he was getting #1 pound for pound acclaim. And I think that certain people are really getting tired of this bullshit that Gervonta Tank Davis is putting out there that, you know, oh, I'll knock this dude out. I'll beat up this guy. I'll beat up that guy. Well, dude, don't just talk about it. Be about it. No offense against Gervonta Tank Davis. Dude's a great star. He's a great boxer. But people are getting really tired of this shit of you fighting guys that pretty much fight after fight either A, have never been a champion before and don't really have that championship level experience like a Ryan Garcia or that of a Frank Martin. Now, the Ryan Garcia fight was acceptable because that was looked at as debatably the biggest fight in boxing, and that was a fight that was on the build-up for several years. And Ryan Garcia, you know, it was very clear that he was fighting bum after bum, and, you know, there was only so good he was going to get within that amount of time. But, you know, when it comes to other fighters, once again, Gervonta Tank Davis, he's not really fought a fighter yet other than Ryan Garcia that the whole public has really called for. Say whatever you want to about some of these other fighters like a Crawford or Inoue or Canelo or Usyk. Say whatever you want to about them. Canelo Alvarez has fought Golovkin. He's fought Lara. He's fought Jacobs. He fought Mayweather. He fought certain other guys like that. He fought Plant. You know, he fought those guys. Inoue fought Stephon Coolboy Fulton. He fought everyone within his weight classes. You know, Usyk fought Fury. He fought AJ. He fought everybody at the cruiserweight division. He fought Danny Dubois. You know, so say whatever you want to about those fighters. But those guys have been about the legacy life. Gervonta Tank Davis hasn't really done shit in boxing. And it's not like he's like 25 or 24 years old. Like, the dude is 30 years old. The dude is 30 years old and really hasn't accomplished that much in boxing. The man, in my view, is a top 10 level pound for pound fighter. But it's like, dude, like, after a while, you are going to have to get in the ring with somebody that people actually give a fuck about for you to fight. No one gives a fuck about you fighting these Latino bums like Isaac Pitbull Cruz and Mario Barrios and all these other guys and Rolly Romero who can box worth of shit. Nobody cares. Now, those guys recently became champions because Al Heyman, let's be honest, he really put them in very considerable situations in weight classes to where all the belts are pretty much vacant and it was nowhere near as talented as what he used to be. And as soon as Isaac Pitbull Cruz faced a legitimate champion, he got his ass kicked. And as soon as Rolly Romero faced a dude in Isaac Pitbull Cruz that even had a little bit of boxing ability, he got his ass kicked. You know, and Mario Barrios just had a draw against a dude that I don't even fucking know in his last fight. So once again, you know, Gervonta Tank Davis fanboys will be like, oh, well, some of the guys that he fought have became champions. Right. Would they have became champions during the era where Jose Ramirez, Josh Taylor, and Regis Prograis were champions? Probably not, right? Would they have became champions when Crawford and Spence and Jerome Boutzenis and Staniosis, when those guys would have been champions? Probably not. So that was genius matchmaking by Al Heyman because he knew that his main star, Gervonta Tank Davis, that he was starting to receive criticism about his resume. And the genius matchmaking by putting those guys within vacant weight classes, not only was that treating them well by getting them in championship level fights and then becoming a champion, but then on top of that, he could kill two birds with one stone, appease them, and then on top of that, kind of lessen the criticism of Gervonta Tank Davis's resume. But people are seeing overall, once again, the forest through the trees. They're tired of this bullshit where he keeps fighting all these bums, man. They don't care about these fights. And then his next fight is Lamont Roach Jr. That's why his last fight, even against Frank Martin, you know, people are not really paying to see that shit. He only did 350,000 pay-per-view buys. Canelo Alvarez against Edgar Berlanga, even though that's not really the fight that everybody wanted to see, he did twice the numbers as a Gervonta Tank Davis. So these guys have been trying to allege, they tried to allege that Gervonta was the face of boxing over Canelo Alvarez because he had a fight against Ryan Garcia, which was a fight that was supposed to do over 1 million pay-per-view buys because that was a fight that was in the build-up for the past several years. And they said that Gervonta Tank Davis said, oh, he's the clear face of boxing because, you know, take a look at the numbers there. And I said, you can't compare it like that because Canelo hasn't been in a fight like that for a while that would do comparable to those numbers because he doesn't have a similar dancing partner other than maybe David Benavidez to where he could do those numbers. So what you're going to have to compare it to is when Gervonta Tank Davis fights guys within his next fight that aren't on that level, because there's no other fighter out there that can probably do in those numbers. And I was absolutely correct. And we've seen the number of results within his past fight.
Ordered to dissing Terrence Bud Crawford family, his wife and his kids. If you don't want to hear what led up to that and the full story, and you just want to hear Crawford's response to Gervonta disrespecting his family, then you can fast forward till the end of the video. I'm going to leave the timestamp in the description box below of where exactly on the video Crawford responded to Gervonta disrespecting his family. Now let's talk about what led up to that first. Surprisingly enough, Gervonta, who didn't want to work with Turkey, who initially turned down a Turkey offer to fight Devin Haney for his biggest payday. At that time, Turkey offered Gervonta a massive offer to fight Devin Haney before the Ryan Garcia fight. Well, Gervonta rejected. He didn't even want to hear it. However, now all of a sudden, he was dissing Turkey because he wasn't invited to the Ring Magazine Festival. This is not the case that Turkey didn't invite anyone that he doesn't work with, because Turkey invited Canelo Alvarez, Teofimo Lopez, and Ryan Garcia. All of these fighters and more didn't work with Turkey before.
Well, the reason why Turkey was more than likely willing to invite them is because those guys were willing to do business with him. And that's why I say Turkey, you know, he's, you know, I think that he's brought some positives to boxing, but I also think that he's going to have to be a little bit more cordial with some of these boxers, because he kind of has this attitude to where he's going to be this trailblazer and that, you know, you either do it my way or the highway. And once again, when you talk about fighters like Gervonta Tank Davis and Canelo, they don't always need you to make big fights because they have a big fan base, especially someone like a Canelo Alvarez. But once again, he was able to do business with Canelo, but I think Canelo pretty much said that, okay, you know what, that Terrence Bud Crawford, even though that Crawford fight, even though a certain amount of people are probably just going to say that I was too big for him, if I end up whooping Crawford's ass or clearly beating Terrence Bud Crawford, I can phrase it in a way to where it'll kind of, you know, not make people forget about the Mayweather loss, but make it look a little bit better, because then it'll look like I got better against that type of style later on in my career. And then on top of that, I beat a fighter that was debatably up there with me as the greatest fighter in my generation.
Well, that's when Crawford stepped in and...
But it had to be after Crawford won at the 154-pound weight class, so he could phrase it in a similar light to Sugar Ray Leonard versus Hagler or Sugar Shane Mosley versus Oscar De La Hoya. There was no way that Canelo Alvarez was going to take that fight with Crawford, with Crawford moving up 3 weight classes. There was no way. There needed to be something in it for him.
Gervonta Davis for dissing Turkey. And that's what led to Gervonta dissing Crawford family. But it all began with Gervonta flexing on Crawford, telling Crawford, I still make more money than you. Because
right, well, Terrence Bud Crawford kind of he kind of started it a little bit by saying overall, once again, that looks like someone's mad that they weren't invited to the gala. Because I believe that that was a direct response towards Gervonta Tank Davis. So let's not try to act like Terrence Bud Crawford wasn't trying to get a little bit out of a rise of Gervonta Tank Davis. Listen, at the end, the man responded first. Gervonta Tank Davis and Crawford are not really on good terms. It just is what it is. They've had a little bit of a Twitter beef before, especially because Gervonta Tank Davis, he picked Errol Spence Jr. over Crawford, and not only that, he went a little bit further with it. You know, so it is what it is. And of course, in regular Gervonta Tank Davis like fashion, he said he knocked Terrence Bud Crawford out, but then of course he made no moves to try to make that fight or anything else, and he really shouldn't, because they're clearly not the same size. But people are getting really tired of Gervonta Tank Davis talking all this shit about he's gonna knock this guy out, he's gonna knock this guy out. Do you know how many times I've heard Gervonta Tank Davis say that he's gonna fight this guy or knock this dude out, or that he can knock that dude out? Right then, dude, then try to make the fight, but you won't do that.
See, Gervonta can't talk legacy with Crawford. He can't talk greatness with Crawford. So he figured, I can talk money, though, until Crawford checked him when it came to that department as well. You see, we all know when it comes to legacy, Crawford already smashed all of his rivals. He didn't just beat...
Well, he smashed the guys that he pretty much had to fight. like I said, Terrence Bud Crawford, he beat, that of a Victor Postol when the fight called for it. He beat that of a Yuriorkis Gamboa when it called for it. And of course, he also beat that of an Errol Spence Jr. when it called for it. But I think that Terrence Bud Crawford, I think that his career would have been remembered a little bit more fondly had he moved to the PBC and potentially tried to make fights with guys like Danny Garcia, Kell Brook, and some of those guys a bit earlier, especially before maybe Errol Spence Jr. got to them. Because now, pretty much the consensus, or what a lot of people believe about Crawford, is that even though, yes, he beat Errol Spence Jr. and he beat the man, that his run there, even though it was great to a degree, because of course he had all knockouts and he beat Sean Porter and Errol Spence is pretty much the man that did all the heavy lifting in that weight class. And people can get mad at that all they want to, but at the end of the day, Errol Spence was the one that beat Danny Garcia. He's the one that beat Sean Porter when he was a champion. He was the one that beat Kell Brook when he was still a champion at the welterweight division. He was the one that beat Yordenis Ugas when he was a champion. Who did Crawford really beat at the welterweight class? I mean, he beat Jeff Horn, I guess, but I don't think anyone really considered Jeff Horn as an A-grade level fighter. Jeff Horn was one of those guys that ended up beating a very good fighter or a very great fighter. That happens every once in a while, to where a fighter ends up beating a great fighter and wins the belt when they probably shouldn't have, because that fighter either had a bad performance or they didn't take them seriously enough. And a lot of people really thought that Manny Pacquiao probably should have won that fight anyway. Now, I thought the fight was close. I think Manny Pacquiao heavily underestimated him, and I don't really mind Jeff Horn getting that decision, but Jeff Horn was never an A-grade level fighter. There are certain fights to where that just ends up happening. It just is what it is. Where certain upsets end up happening and the guy ends up getting the belt and they're just nowhere near as talented as the other guy. Like, that's what happened with Jason Rosario and Julian J. Rock Williams. Jason Rosario ended up knocking him out. He was nowhere near the talent of a J. Rock Williams, and that's why Jermell Charlo had such an easy time with him.
He destroyed them. He knocked them out, from Errol Spence to Sean Porter, etc., etc. It's no secret. Floyd Mayweather passed the torch to Bud Crawford. He's been the pound-for-pound #1 since Floyd Mayweather and Andre Ward retired, becoming the two-time...
Well, no, he's not the #1 pound-for-pound fighter since they retired once again. Lomachenko did have the rightful claim to that mantle for about a year and a half, and Canelo Alvarez did have the rightful claim to that mantle for about 2 to 3 years. Once again, AKHi TV is going to try to frame it within this light that those guys were only ranked #1 pound-for-pound to degrade Crawford as a black fighter. No, Crawford once again was never the confirmed #1 pound-for-pound fighter until he beat Errol Spence Jr. And even Turki Al-Rashid, I believe, who owns the Ring magazine right now, he placed Alexander Usyk as the #1 pound-for-pound fighter at the current moment in time. So these guys can bitch, moan, and complain and talk about racism all they want to, but at the end of the day, they realize that Usyk and some of these other guys had a great debate as the #1 pound-for-pound fighter. That's why they try to degrade them so much, and they try to make constant excuses no matter who they're about to fight.
I'm undisputed champion.
Like he says that Usyk, that, oh, he doesn't have any elite black American fighters within his weight classes. He beat a lot of European fighters, and they're not as good as the black Americans. So, we can't really say that his resume is as dominant. So basically what you're saying is that Terrence Bud Crawford, that he really only has 2 great wins in his career against Sean Porter and Errol Spence Jr., because 2 of the biggest wins in his career over European white boys. So how come once again, whenever it comes to certain fighters that they want to prop up, he beat a great European fighter that was a gold medalist or a guy that had a great amateur pedigree. But then when it comes to guys like Canelo Alvarez or Usyk, they say, oh, well, yeah, he just beat a European fighter, and they're not as dominant as American fighters. Like, come on, man.
In 2 different divisions, and a champion in 4.
Like, he tries to state that Usyk's division was dead when he beat the heavyweight division, which is complete bullshit. But Crawford, when he beat guys like Victor Postol at 140 and an African fighter, Joyous Ndango, please tell me 5 or even 3 all-time great level African fighters, please, right now, I dare you. Please tell me overall 3 all-time great level black fighters, African fighters that you know. Please tell me. And I'm talking about from Africa, Ghana, Nigeria, certain places like that. You're not going to name me that. So once again, isn't it very particularly interesting how all of a sudden, they just completely have different standards depending on the fighter?
4 different weight classes. So pretty much Crawford already beat multiple champions, multiple pound-for-pound fighters, multiple undefeated fighters, multiple gold medalists.
Who did Crawford beat that would have been on the top 10 pound-for-pound list other than Errol Spence Jr.? I need to know. Because it wasn't Victor Postol. It definitely wasn't Sean Porter. It definitely wasn't fucking Israel Madrimov. And Gamboa, I mean, he may have made a top 10 pound-for-pound list here and there, but he wasn't mainly on the top 10 pound-for-pound list. because he had only ever won one belt in his career, I believe, and only had been a champion in one weight class. So he would have not been top 10 pound for pound. Who did Crawford ever beat that was that was another top 10 pound for pound fighter? It wasn't Postal. It wasn't Gamboa. It wasn't Porter. You know, so other than Spence, who are you talking about, man? Because none of the other fighters would have been top 10 pound for pound. So you got to be very careful with AKHi TV once again because, he spreads a lot of bullshit. And don't get it twisted. Crawford, in my view, all-time great level fighter, debatably the greatest of his generation. Even if he loses to Canelo, in my view, he's debatably the greatest of his generation. But the thing is that these guys try to spread so much bullshit and so much deceit and so much lies. And he beat a multitude of gold medalists, right? But what does that really mean? Like Vasily Lomachenko and Ryan Garcia beat a gold medalist and Luke Campbell. Like, who really fucking cares? Just because you were a silver medalist or a gold medalist in the amateurs doesn't always mean that you're going to be the greatest of professional boxers. These guys always like to pull this shit out of their ass. They always like to pull these arguments out of their ass when it suits them. And then when it comes to a fighter like Alexander Usyk, who may be a gold medalist or a great fighter with an amateur pedigree, then all of a sudden it doesn't matter anymore because, oh, this is the pros and it's different. Right, it is different. So then why are you using that to prop up Terrence Crawford, man? No one gives a fuck that he beat a Felix Diaz who was a silver medalist. Like, come on, the man was never a champion in professional boxing. Aegis Kavlauskas, who was an Olympian, like, no one fucking cares, man. Like, come on.
You name it. Bud did it all.
Like, fucking Audley Harrison was a gold medalist, I believe, in the amateurs. So does that mean that David Hayes, that he was one of the greatest fighters of all time, or that, we should put him on a higher level because, oh man, he beat Audley Harrison? Like, come on, bro.
And at 37, 38 years old, he's still daring to be great by moving up 3 weight classes one time, or 2 at the moment in time, to fight Canelo Alvarez in his 6th weight class, something that has never been done for undisputed if Canelo can get past.
Well, actually, it would be something that's been done before because there have been multiple fighters that have moved up 2 weight classes in order to win a belt. Sugar Shane Mosley did it against De La Hoya. Roberto Duran did it against Sugar Ray Leonard. I cannot remember if Sugar Ray Leonard moved up 2 weight classes, at 147 to fight Marvin Hagler, or if he won at 154 first. I can't remember. But this is not something to where this is the first time this has been achieved. That's why Canelo Alvarez once again waited for Terrence Bud Crawford to win a belt at 154 first, because he said, I'm not going to be a person that, ends up whooping your ass in my fight and then I get claimed as the guy that beat a guy that came up 3 weight classes. What the fuck would I want to take that fight for? If you're going to fight me, then you're going to have to at least do something to where we can phrase it to where I at least get a little bit of credit. No one's going to give me credit if you come up 3 weight classes. You have to come up at least 2. You have to, do something, to be in it for me.
William Skull. You see, this is why Gervonta didn't want to talk legacy. He didn't want to talk greatness with Bud, since he already knew what time it was. Gervonta has yet to fight his rivals, the Devin Haney,
Agreed.
Shakur, the Keyshawn.
Now, to be fair, once again, he fought Ryan Garcia, but it pretty much was universally known that Ryan Garcia, at least at the time, was looked at as the weakest and the least skilled out of any of those particular rivals that are shown on the screen. Now, maybe Ryan Garcia could beat a Teofimo Lopez and a Devin Haney in a rematch. We'll have to see. But the thing is that, once again, these guys on the screen, other than Ryan Garcia, all those other guys were looked at as the most dangerous fighters. And, of course, they don't have Shakur Stevenson on there, but Shakur Stevenson as well. Gervonta hasn't fought fucking one of them.
The Lomachenkos of the world, the Teofimo Lopez of the world. So he can't talk to Bud about legacy nor greatness, because what Inouye and Gervonta are not even dare to think about, Bud Crawford is daring to do, which...
You notice how he put Inouye in the same sense as him? Now, this video is supposed to be about Gervonta Davis and Terrence Bud Crawford comparatively. Why all of a sudden would he just randomly put Inouye's name in there when he really has nothing to do with this conversation? Now, of course, certain people may say, well, Inouye is looked at as a top pound-for-pound fighter, right? But this conversation is mainly about Crawford and that of Gervonta Davis. Why would he put Inouye's name in there unless the only motivation could possibly be is subconsciously he can put it within your mind that Inouye doesn't want to move up 3 weight classes to fight Gervonta Davis, so he can make the excuse and say that if Crawford loses to Canelo, that, oh, well, we have to still give him credit because he was just trying to accomplish greatness. Even though AKHi TV says that Crawford is levels above Canelo Alvarez, and that, you know, he's potentially going to beat him, and that Canelo was ducking him and so afraid of him. If Crawford loses, what he's going to do is just make the excuse that, well, you know, he's still the number one pound for pound fighter, you know, because in a way, and, you know, Gervonta Tank Davis fighters like that, they wouldn't even dare to do that. That's the reason why he put Inoue's name right there. So he can do that bullshit, you know, later on. You know, but anyway. And listen, don't get it twisted. Crawford does deserve a valid excuse if he loses to Canelo Alvarez. But remember, AKHi TV is one of these guys that claims that Canelo Alvarez is levels below Crawford. He's this guy that claims that Crawford is levels above Canelo Alvarez in terms of skill. That Crawford, that he was being avoided and ducked by Canelo Alvarez. So put your money where your mouth is and favor Crawford for the fight. You notice that they talk all this shit about how Canelo Alvarez, you know, is this average boxer. But every time that the fights are out to come around, they have Canelo Alvarez as the favorite in the fucking fight every single time. Isn't that interesting?
It is moving up multiple weight classes, one time to his 6th weight class to fight the undisputed champion Canelo Alvarez, who Gervonta said, "That's me at 168. I'm the Canelo of my division." Well, since Gervonta didn't want to move up to fight Bud is willing to move up multiple weight classes to fight the Gervonta of the 168-pound division, the undisputed champion there, Canelo Alvarez. That's why Gervonta couldn't talk legacy nor greatness with Bud. Which,
you know, and you know, Gervonta Tank Davis better stay away from Terrence Bud Crawford. And I'm not usually one that once again has any emotional attachment overall to certain people, but I'm getting so fucking tired of Gervonta Tank Davis's mouth. If that fight were to happen, I would root for Terrence Bud Crawford to just whoop the shit out of Gervonta Tank Davis, because I'm getting tired of that little Gary Coleman ass. I'm getting real tired of that dude's fucking mouth. Nobody wants to hear about how you're gonna knock this dude out and knock that dude out and beat this dude up and beat this dude up. Like, bro, get in the fucking ring with somebody. Like, people are getting tired of this shit. People are getting tired of you getting in the ring with bum after bum after bum after bum. Go fight Shakur Stevenson. Go fight Devin Haney. Go fight Teofimo Lopez.
is why he resorted to talking money. Then, when Terrence Bud Crawford...
Now, once again, I'll give Gervonta Tank Davis his credit. He did try to make the Lomachenko fight this year. You know, even though, of course, Lomachenko pulled out. So, I mean, you know, I'll give him credit for that. And I'm not really sure exactly what happened with the Shakur Stevenson fight, but it's been very apparent that Gervonta has not really tried hard body to make that fight happen. It just is what it is, you know. But you know, once again, you know, let's rewind this because there was also another point that I wanted to bring up.
Move up multiple weight classes to fight the Gervonta fellow of my division. Well, since Gervonta didn't want to move up to fight Bud is willing to move up multiple weight.
And AKHi TV, you should stick to your same statement, same as Dante's Boxing Nation, saying that Gervonta Tank Davis, that he's way more skilled than Canelo. Now all of a sudden, you know, he's kind of saying that, oh, well, you know, Canelo was the Gervonta of his division. Once again, AKHi TV, he's a little bit pissed off at Gervonta Tank Davis, so what he actually truly thinks in his subconscious is finally coming out.
Classes to fight the Gervonta.
And a person will finally tell the truth once they start to get a little bit pissed off. You know, it's like a person that was kissing your ass for some particular reason, and then all of a sudden you say the wrong thing, and then all of a sudden they say basically everything that they thought about you the whole entire time.
Of the 168-pound division, the undisputed champion there, Canelo Alvarez. That's why Gervonta couldn't talk legacy nor greatness with Bud. Which is why he resorted to talking money. Then, when Terrence Bud Crawford came out and checked Gervonta in that department as well, by stating, quote, "By the way, little guy, don't speak too soon because you're definitely not making more money than me fighting who you've been fighting. That's why you talking about fighting Ryan."
Well, listen, Mr. Terrence Bud Crawford, Gervonta Tank Davis does have usually bigger revenues than you. At the end of the day, even Gervonta Tank Davis's worst pay-per-view numbers do better than sometimes your best pay-per-view numbers, Mr. Terrence Bud Crawford. That's just the bottom line. And I know that a lot of Crawford fanboys are not going to like that, but it is what it is. Crawford is not a boxing superstar. Now, in terms of ability and in terms of greatness and in terms of what he can do in the ring, yes, he's an absolute superstar. He's a menace. But in terms of the ability to attract, you know, butts and seats and to be a box office attraction, no, he's never been that. That goes to certain guys like Tyson Fury and, AJ Anthony Joshua, but especially Canelo, Gervonta Davis, and of course, the previous years before them, Pacquiao and Mayweather, to a little degree, Miguel Cotto, and, certain other fighters that maybe I'm forgetting at the moment in time. But that goes to those fighters. Crawford is not a box office attraction. He just never has been. And certain guys, they're all-time great level fighters. Like, they're great, overall attractions in terms of what they can do in the ring, But it's very rare that you get a package to where they can be all-time great level fighters and really have that great image and be a box office attraction, or at least have great ability in being a box office attraction. Like Oscar De La Hoya was a guy that, had the perfect image. He was a guy that had the looks, he had great boxing talent, he kind of had a lot of the Mexican American and Mexican, fan base with him after a while, even though a certain amount of them criticized him at first. He had a lot of the American fan base behind him. He had a little bit of charisma. Oscar De La Hoya was one of those guys that could be looked at as an all-time great level fighter and a box office attraction. And on top of that, he spoke English. Floyd Mayweather was an all-time great level fighter and a box office attraction. Canelo Alvarez is an all-time great level fighter and a box office attraction. But there are just certain fighters to where they may just be one or the other. They may be box office attractions, but they may not be all-time great level fighters, like a Ryan Garcia, in my personal view, at least so far. And then, of course, you have Terrence Bud Crawford, who's an all-time great level talent and an all-time great level boxer, but he's not a box office star. So a lot of people, they don't really understand that in order to be a box office star, no matter how great you are, you just, sometimes that's just natural. It is what it is. Some people have it, sometimes they don't. Of course, sometimes it has to do with a little bit of better promotion, but sometimes there's only so much that the promoter can really work with, especially if you just don't have that charisma and if you don't have that image behind you. So it is what it is.
Yeah. Bud is referring to Gervonta asking for $150 million to fight Ryan again at 140 in the division. Ryan is not going to move back down to again. Ryan made it very clear he's not moving back down to 140. So for
example, if we were to talk about another example, not to digress too much, but for those of you that watched NBA basketball, throughout the early 2000s, Allen Iverson was one of the biggest stars of that decade. Now, in my view, Allen Iverson is the most overrated basketball player of all time. But Allen Iverson, the way that his fan base talks about him, you'd think that he was a top 10 player or some shit. Even though certain guys, like in my view, Steve Nash brought more to the table, and Jason Kidd definitely brought more to the table. And even debatably, Chauncey Billups brought more to the table than an Allen Iverson did. But Allen Iverson had that box office star quality.
Gervonta to be calling out Ryan, a fighter, no one is asking Gervonta to fight again.
Well, that's Gervonta Davis's formula, is to take on fights that nobody fucking wants. That's his whole formula. And that's why his pay-per-view numbers have recently been suffering.
Asking Gervonta to fight,
at least compared to some of his standards.
Or Keyshawn, Devin Haney, at least Teofimo Lopez. If he can't get Lomachenko at the very least. But he want to talk about Ryan, who doesn't want to do VADA testing, who doesn't want to do any rehydration clause. Matter of fact, he doesn't even want to.
Yeah, isn't that very interesting on Gervonta Davis? He claimed that Devin Haney was on PEDs. And listen, I think that Devin Haney is more than likely on PEDs as well because of the snack program. But then Ryan Garcia gets caught on PEDs and he's trying to make all these excuses for him. And listen, don't get it twisted. At the end of the day, I can kind of understand it to a degree because if you're on PEDs and you get beat by a guy on PEDs, well, hey, you both are juiced up. But it's just very interesting.
Make weight. We all know Gervonta is not going to agree to any of that. In fact, leading up to their fight years back, I'm talking about 5 to 4 months before the fight, Gervonta told Ryan, if you don't enroll with VADA early, I'm talking about 3 to 4 months before the fight, then we have no fight. That's who Gervonta want to call out for $150 million instead of his rivals that he haven't fought yet. Devin, Shakur, Keyshawn, Teofimo Lopez, and Lomachenko. You can throw Loma out the way, but you're supposed to move down the ladder to who's willing to fight. Therefore, Terrence Bud Crawford believes Gervonta is not doing too well because he wouldn't be asking for a Ryan rematch, especially for $150 million. That don't even make sense. Crawford also said, quote, First thing a dumb rich person says to another rich person is, I got more money than you. I bet you I own more investments than you. And I don't owe $1 in taxes. You can't buy nothing I can't buy that I won't, sir. And that's a fact. Let's see who money lasts the longest, smart guy. End of the quote.
Well, anyways, that's pretty much about it for this video that I that I really wanted to review. A lot of this other shit is just bloated up bullshit that I really don't care about. But I just thought that that would be very particularly interesting because AKHi TV finally tells the truth on Gervonta Davis, a dude that he's also been protecting for a very long time. But Gervonta Davis, basically what he's telling him is that, listen, dude, Terrence Bud Crawford is the guy that, you know, we're behind. Get with the fucking program, you know, or we're going to start criticizing you even a little bit more. And it's the same thing with all the other black fighters. That's why I say these guys that claim that they're so for black fighters and freedom of speech, no, they're not. They're exactly like the feminazis, to where you have to be careful about whatever you say around them, because if you say anything that trips off their radar, then they're going to claim that you're a misogynist and that you don't respect women and that you're this, you know, misogynist pig and all this other bullshit. You know, it's the same thing with AKHi TV. He's a part of the pro-black cult. So if you say anything that he disagrees with, then, you know, he's going to claim that either you're a racist or something like that, or that you have racial motivations, even if it's a logical debate or an analysis. And if you're a black fighter, he's just going to state that you're a coon, or that you're an Uncle Tom, or that you're for the white man, or that, or that, you know, overall that you're just trying to appease the race fans. That's what their, you know, bottom line argument is. You know, so once again, you got to be very careful with these guys, man, because they're a lot like the liberal politicians. They claim that, you know, they're for you know, fairness, and that they're for the freedom of speech, and that they're for the freedom of everybody's rights. That's not really what they are. What they really are is Nazis. That's really what they are. If you don't agree with them, then they'll humiliate you, and they'll badger you and blunder you until you agree with them, until they humiliate you publicly. But it is what it is. But anyways, that pretty much is about it for today. Thank y'all so much for watching. I'll talk to y'all later, and we'll see where this goes. More than likely, it's going to go with Gervonta Davis taking another fight that no one gives a fuck about. But we'll see what happens. Anyways, that pretty much is about it for today. But we'll see what happens.